This video will demonstrate how to terminate the Kings by Winchester SMPTE 304 camera connector. Follow along on the written instruction as shown on the screen. You'll receive the connectors fully assembled with all the components needed inside the connector. Start out by disassembling the connector and removing all of the components. After you've cut the cable to length, prepare the work area and disassemble the parts which slide onto the cable. Use the work instructions to guide you on which parts to put in the sequence, the correct sequence. Be sure that the parts are put in the correct sequence, because once the camera connector is attached you won't be able to change the order of the parts.
Okay, so that's the jack side. So we're stripping 3 5/8.
When using the stripping tool, make sure that you don't cut too deep, because you do not want to nick the coax. Slide the coax down to make it easier to remove. Carefully cut the coax without nicking any of the insulation on the conductors, or especially the fiber optic cables that are inside.
So you want to trim down to 3/4.
Make sure the coax is exactly 3/4 of an inch so that it will insert into the connector correctly. Remove the filler down as far as possible inside the coax, the shield. Disassemble the inside of the connector, making sure not to damage the white shell halves. Remove all the contacts and the other pieces and lay them out neatly. Make sure to refer to the work instruction to determine the exact cut length and strip length at every step in the process. Remove the filler all the way down to the base of the outer insulation.
So you keep the filler on, the blue fillers, just to keep it round.
perform all the same steps for the jack side of the cable, and loading the connector components on the cable and preparing the cable ends. Once you have both ends fully prepped, then you're ready to strip the fiber. A Schleniger heated fiber stripper is recommended to make the process easy and eliminate any damage or nicks on the fiber. You can also use manual fiber strippers. Clean the fiber using alcohol. Have the ceramic fiber ferrules prepared. These should have come inside the connector and should be clean. Insert the epoxy until a very small bead appears on the end of the ceramic fiber ferrule. Don't place the ceramic ferrule onto any surface. Immediately insert the fiber into the back of the ferrule. It's very easy to break the fiber at this point, so gently insert the ferrule and with twisting if necessary. Do the same steps for the second fiber. Make sure the ceramic fiber ferrule is inserted all the way down to the 900 micron buffer material. And then insert the fiber and the ceramic ferrule into the curing oven. Pay attention to the temperature of the oven and the time as listed in the instruction. We've shown here a Corning 18-port benchtop oven, which allows you to cure the ferrules at a controlled temperature and ensures that they are held in an upright position so the ferrule can't fall off. Any fiber optic curing oven can be used, but you must pay attention to ensuring that the fiber ferrules stay on the fiber and do not slip off. If the fiber ferrules slip off or slip down the fiber and then it's cured, it's likely that the ferrules will break off. Cure the oven for the amount of time shown in the instruction.
Okay.
Once the epoxy is cured, carefully remove the fiber ferrules from the oven, and using a diamond cleaver, nick the end of the fiber close as possible to the fiber ferrule, and then break it off using a pulling motion.
Okay.
It's very important to cleave correctly and to ensure that the polishing will go smoothly without any cracks or chips coming out. Secure the copper and the strength member at the back of the cable to make it easier for polishing. Just use regular half-inch masking tape. Once the copper wires are secured to the cable jacket, perform the finger polish. This just removes the excess fiber sticking out from the epoxy after the epoxy is cured.
Try and do figure 8.
This is done using a 15 micron or similar piece of polishing film, which is not critical. Just be sure not to scratch the ferrule excessively because you're only trying to remove the fiber. Once the hand polish is complete, attach the fiber ferrules onto a 2mm machine polish fixture. This fixture can be modified with some kind of cable management, and any cable management will be sufficient as long as it doesn't apply too much force to the fiber ferrule.
Okay.
Insert the fiber ferrules into the 2mm polishing fixture using the setting plate as a guide, and ensure the ferrules are fully seated and even around the polishing fixture. Once they're inserted completely, tighten to ensure that the fiber ferrule is clamped and doesn't slip out during polishing.
If you want to hold that, that's fine. Just slide it out. Right?
You should have a little bit of space so you can screw it in.
So the ferrules are attached. Prepare the polishing film and polishing pads per normal single mode polishing techniques. The fixture containing the 2mm ferrules can then be inserted into the machine, making sure that the pressure is even and the cables are supported above.
Much better.
Set the polishing time for each step of the polishing procedure according to the instructions.
Okay. Tell them everything.
In between polishing steps, it's very important to remove any traces of the previous polishing film from the surface of the ferrules. Any distilled water can be used for this purpose, or deionized water from a central system is also useful.
And see, so Walmart is just as quality conscious as say Poland Springs.
Really?
So
Well, you know, there's distilled water and there's just sort of like spring water, you know, which is not very good.
right.
Distilled water's the best. But yeah, there's how distilled, I guess. How many impurities?
This is especially important on the first few steps of the polishing process, and if they're not clean and dried fully, you will have scratches at the end of the process.
Okay.
You know, this is basically like people like NBC, ESPN, people who want to polish our camera connectors in-house. They want
Cost effectiveness. Is that
uh,
you mean after a period of use?
Apply the film to the correct rubber backing and be sure to clean all areas, the back and front of the polishing film.
Yeah.
but what we're doing is, you know, this is hard. Doing all this polishing is really difficult. What we're going to do is we're going to pre-polish these connectors and then splice them on. So basically, you know, be showing all this difficulty and trouble, and then we'll go into the pre-polish, and you just splice it on in minutes. And so that's what we're really pushing is the splice-on version. You know, when we build it in-house, we'll do it like this, because we know how to do it, and we have all the tooling.
Well, can I go work for them?
Paying $100 to get it fixed.
Nice to be on it too.
So that's why we're working with the splicer manufacturer to become a partner, and you know, they can buy one splicer, that's all they need. It's guaranteed to be good.
Are we going to be doing a lot of these cables, this setup right here?
Mostly just for samples. So
Once again, be sure that the backing pad is clean and that the polishing film sticks to the backing pad correctly. Smooth out the polishing film on the backing pad so that there are a minimum number of air bubbles. Make sure that the polishing film backing pad sticks firmly to the polishing machine by using a mixture of alcohol and water on the back of the pad, and it should stay on tightly. This will make sure that the polishing quality is good.
also, I mean, we can sell all of these tools, you know, as Winchester tools, like the polishing machine, all of that stuff. So I don't think we're going to sell too many.
Once again, be sure to clean and dry the ferrules thoroughly between each step.
Where did they get off sending us unqualified stuff?
They're on the gate.
The last step I put right on the
We're
machine.
up to speed on this. 2001, 2002. There you go. It's only good for...
It's not supposed to move at all.
That's what Daisy is wanting for to check the connector.
The polishing film can be applied to the pad either on the desk or on the polishing machine. Whichever is chosen, make sure that the polishing film sits very flat with the minimum number of air bubbles on the polishing pad.
So now this is where the return loss comes in on the last step. So if this one isn't done right, or if there's anything wrong with it, you're going to get a bad return loss. You know, it could be the difference between 50 dB and 35 dB.
Each time the fixture is returned to the polishing machine, make sure that the retaining screw fits snugly into the polishing fixture.
It's better than
Oh, somebody was claiming something in my process street.
That's too little of one way.
So you can over-polish?
yeah.
The final step is the most critical for obtaining good return loss performance. If any issues are found with return loss, examine the final step and make sure that the polishing film is clean and flat on the polishing machine.
The visual number looker upper.
After polishing, carefully remove all of the ferrules from the polishing fixture.
Do you have a ticket? So I can see what the website.
Okay. Ticket, yes, I have.
Once the ferrules are removed from the polishing fixture, they're ready for inspection. Gently blow off the air from the ends of the ferrules. Using lint-free cloth and alcohol, clean the end of the ferrule before inspection. Using 200x magnification, observe the glass inside the ferrule, make sure there are no pits or scratches.
Yeah, do you have covers? Let me see if I can get it.
Once the in-face of the ferrules have been verified, place the dust cap on the end of the ferrule to prevent contamination.
This is good.
After the fibre is polished, you're ready to prepare the copper wires. First, straighten out all the copper and strength member and measure measure the strength member so that it can be cut to length.
Pretty big, huh? Strong.
Prepare the copper wires by trimming exactly at the length of the end of the ferrule. It's critical that the copper conductors are trimmed exactly to the same length and that this is lined up with the end of the ferrule.
use this plug one like a 20 gauge, 22 gauge.
Once the copper conductors are cut to length, strip each of the conductors using hand or automated strippers, making sure not to nick the copper conductors. These should be stripped to a 1/4 inch.
Yep. And then for the other one I use 24 gauge. Gotta slide this piece now.
On the black and the white wires, join the two conductors together to make sure that it will fit in the back of the crimp contact. Once these are inserted, ensure that there's a good fit and that no strands are protruding. Then using the KTH 1000 tool, crimp the conductors and the contact together.
Okay. So it's the Kings KTH 1000 with a KTH 2010 die set. Then you gotta lay it out a certain way.
Right. And then
Be sure to lay out the conductors and the colors according to the work instruction for that cable.
divide it and put this on.
Insert the strength member retainer over the strength member and secure with the Allen wrench.
in the yeah.
We'll start with the jack side and show the termination procedure for the jack insulator. When assembling the fiber contacts into the insulator, be sure that the fibers aren't caught on any of the copper wires and that they're not stuck underneath any of the other parts. Work on one side first, inserting the two copper contacts into the black insulator, and then place the white insulator over the top. This will retain the copper contacts inside the black insulator. Insert the remaining copper contacts, making sure that you are not placing any pressure on the fiber and that the fiber is not tangled or bent in any way. Make sure that the copper contacts are protruding from the front of the insulator correctly, and bring the crimp ferrule onto the back of the connector. Crimp this on, and then you'll be ready to insert the connector into the connector body.
Go from there.
Insert the connector into the connector body, making sure to line up the red dots on the body and ensure that the key goes into the pins.
Put alcohol in this slice.
That concludes the assembly of the jack side, and next we'll move on to termination of the plug.
Now I'm insert.
The copper conductors and contacts are prepared in the same way as for the jack side, and the insulator is slightly different. Make sure you have the insulator correctly positioned and insert the fiber contacts first. Then insert the remaining copper contacts.
The wrong one.
Once the contacts are placed inside the black insulator, insert the white insulator into the holes, making sure that the contacts are retained correctly. Make sure also that the fibers are not being crushed by any copper or any other components.
Okay.
After both white insulators are placed inside the black insulator, make sure that the copper contacts are protruding correctly and evenly. Trim the excess braid and crimp the ferrule as before.
Get the two. Left.
Crimp the braid ferrule as for the jack connector, and then trim off the remaining braid. Once this is complete, the connector can be inserted inside the body.
Ready to go in.
Line up the red marks and the slot with the pin. The inside should slide snugly but firmly inside the connector. Check the orientation of the cable clamp. Make sure that the tabs are lined up with the slots, and then screw in the cable clamp ring. Tighten the rear cable clamp, ensuring that the
Yeah.
cable clamp ring is tightened close to the body using 3/4 wrench. Once this is firm, insert the split sleeve cartridge, line up the red marks and the contact holes, and the assembly of the plug connector is now complete.